5 years. That's how long we had been together. 5 years of love, laughter, and whispered promises of forever. And today, our anniversary, was supposed to be special. I had planned everything. A surprise dinner, a heartfelt letter, and a gift I had spent months picking out. But fate had a different surprise for me. It started with a feeling, that unsettling twist in my gut, like something was off. He hadn't been answering my calls, and my best friend, Maya, was unusually distant. So I went looking for him. The restaurant we always went to on special days wasn't where he was. Instead, I found his car parked outside Maya's apartment. My best friend's apartment. I told myself it was a coincidence. Maybe he was planning something with her. Maybe I was overthinking. But when I climbed the stairs and reached her door, my world collapsed. Laughter. Low murmurs. The unmistakable sound of betrayal. I pushed the door open. They didn't even hear me at first, too wrapped up in each other. My boyfriend, the man I thought I knew, and Maya, my so-called best friend. Their smiles vanished when they saw me. Silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. Why? My voice was barely a whisper, but it sliced through the room like a knife. Neither of them had an answer. Tears burned in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I turned on my heel, stepping out of that place that reeked of lies, leaving behind the people who shattered my trust. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I didn't scream. I walked away. Because love shouldn't be a battlefield where only one person fights. And friendships shouldn't be daggers disguised as warm smiles. This wasn't my ending. It was my beginning. I walked out of Maya's apartment, my heart pounding, my hands trembling. The cold night air hit my face, but the numbness had already spread deep inside me. I felt hollow, like a part of me had been ripped away. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to get away. Away from them. Away from the suffocating betrayal that threatened to crush me. My phone buzzed. I didn't have to look to know who it was. Him. I ignored it. Then another message. Maya. I blocked her without hesitation. By the time I reached my apartment, my fingers had gone cold from gripping the keys too tight. The second I stepped inside, the silence swallowed me whole. The weight of everything crashed down at once. I sank onto the couch, staring at the ceiling, letting the memories of 5 years flash before my eyes. The stolen kisses, the late-night talks, the promises of forever. All of it lies. A part of me wanted answers. Why did he do it? How long had it been going on? But deep down, I already knew the truth. Love isn't something you betray. If it was real, he wouldn't have done this. Hours passed. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat there, absorbing the pain, letting it mold into something new. Resolve. By morning, I had made my decision. I wasn't going to let them break me. I wasn't going to be the girl who let betrayal define her. I took a deep breath and stood up, reaching for my phone. I deleted his number, erased every picture, every text, every trace of him from my life. Then I did the same with Maya. They were my past. And I was about to step into my future without them. The first few days after the betrayal felt like walking through a fog. I wasn't crying, but I wasn't exactly living either. Everything reminded me of them. The coffee shop where we used to sit for hours, the playlist we made together, even the scent of my own perfume, because I had chosen it with him. But then, something changed. One morning, I looked at myself in the mirror and didn't recognize the girl staring back. She looked lost. Like she was waiting for something, for him to apologize, for her to reach out, for the pain to ease on its own. And I hated that. They didn't deserve another second of my time. So I did what I should have done the moment I caught them. I started living for me. The first thing I did was change my hair. It wasn't about impressing anyone, it was about shedding the past. I walked into a salon, told them to cut it shorter than I'd ever dared, and walked out feeling lighter. Then I joined a gym. Not to get revenge hot, or whatever people called it, but to feel strong. To remind myself that my body was mine, and no one else's. I deleted every trace of him and Maya from my life. Photos? Gone. Old messages? Deleted. Mutual friends who chose to stay neutral?
Blocked.
I didn't need reminders of the past. I was building something new. Instead of wallowing, I poured myself into work. Late nights, new projects, promotions, I thrived. The energy I once wasted worrying about a man who didn't deserve me, I redirected it toward my future. And then, something unexpected happened. A few months later, I ran into him. It wasn't planned. It wasn't dramatic. Just a random afternoon at a bookstore where I was minding my business when I heard a voice I hadn't thought about in weeks. Hey. I turned. There he was. The man I once thought I'd marry. The man who broke me. But looking at him now, I felt nothing. No anger. No sadness. Just peace. I smiled. A real, genuine smile.
Hey.
And then, before he could say anything else, I walked away. Because I was no longer the girl he cheated on. I was the girl who rose from the ashes. And I was never looking back. It had been 6 months since that night. 6 months since my heart shattered, since I erased him and Maya from my life. And honestly, I was doing better than I ever expected. I had a routine now, early morning workouts, focusing on my career and spending time with people who actually cared about me. The pain had dulled, replaced with something stronger. Resilience. Then one afternoon, the universe decided to test me. I was at my favorite bookstore, flipping through a novel, when I heard it. Hey. I froze for a second. That voice. His voice. Taking a slow breath, I turned around. There he was. Daniel. The man who swore he loved me. The man who shattered everything we built. He looked the same, tall, well-dressed, that same nervous habit of rubbing the back of his neck. But his eyes? They looked uneasy. I raised an eyebrow. Can I help you? He exhaled like he'd been holding his breath. I didn't think you'd talk to me. I gave him a small, polite smile. I wasn't planning to. But since you're standing here, go ahead. His jaw tightened. Look, I know I don't deserve this, but I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I tilted my head. Sorry for what? His lips parted, caught off guard. For hurting you. For what I did. I hummed. You mean cheating on me with my best friend? On our anniversaries? His face twisted in shame. I was stupid, okay? I messed up, and I lost the best thing I ever had. I crossed my arms. You did. Silence stretched between us. He looked at me like he was waiting for me to break down, for me to cry, for me to tell him I missed him. But I wouldn't. Because I didn't. Instead, I chuckled, shaking my head. You know what's funny, Daniel? His brows furrowed.
What?
For months, I thought about this moment. I imagined what I'd say if I ever saw you again. Would I yell? Would I cry? Would I tell you how much you broke me? I sighed and met his gaze. Asterisk, asterisk. And now that you're here, I feel nothing. His throat bobbed. Nothings? I smiled. Nothing. For the first time, I saw it in his eyes. Regret. And it wasn't my problem anymore. I turned to leave, but his voice stopped me.
Wait.
Are you seeing someone? I laughed softly, shaking my head. Daniel, that's not your business anymore. With that, I walked away. And for the first time since that night, I realized I had already won. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need closure. Because I had moved on. I left the bookstore with a feeling of victory. Not the kind that comes from revenge or making someone pay, but the quiet kind. The kind that comes from healing. But the universe wasn't done with me yet. That night, while I was out with friends at a rooftop bar, I heard another familiar voice. Well, if it isn't the woman who vanished into thin air. I turned, and my breath caught for a second. Lucas. The one who got away. The one I pushed away. He leaned against the bar, arms crossed, watching me with that same teasing smirk he always had. He hadn't changed much, still tall, still effortlessly confident, still with those piercing blue eyes that saw too much. I forced a chuckle. I didn't vanish. I just cut out the dead weight. His smirk faded slightly.
Yeah.
I heard. I raised an eyebrow. And what exactly did you hear? He exhaled, running a hand through his dark hair. That you disappeared after that asshole cheated on you? His eyes searched mine. You okay? I tilted my head. Would it matter to you if I wasn't? He gave a small, dry laugh. It would. More than you think. Something in his tone made my heart stutter. Lucas wasn't just an old friend. He was the guy who had been there before Daniel, before all the chaos. The guy who once told me he wanted more, but I had been too blind to see it. Before I could respond, he stepped closer. I know you, you know?
His voice was softer now.
And I know when you're pretending to be fine. I scoffed. Oh, so you're a mind reader now? He shook his head.
No.
Just someone who cares. Something inside me cracked at those words. Because when was the last time someone said that and actually meant it? I held his gaze, trying to figure out if I was ready. Ready to let someone in again. Ready to trust. Lucas didn't push. He just stood there, waiting. And for the first time in a long time, I wanted to take a step forward. I wanted to see where this could go. So I took a deep breath, smiled up at him, and said the words I never thought I would again. Buy me a drink, Lucas. And just like that, my story wasn't about heartbreak anymore. It was about new beginnings. Lucas didn't hesitate. With a smirk, he signaled the bartender and ordered my drink, the same one I always used to get. I raised an eyebrow. You still remember? He shrugged. Hard to forget. The bartender slid the glass toward me, and as I took a sip, I felt his eyes on me. Watching.
Studying.
Like he was trying to figure me out. Finally, he leaned in slightly. So, tell me, what's next for you? I tilted my head. What do you mean? He swirled the whiskey in his glass. I mean, you spent months cutting out the past. But what about your future? What do you want now? I hadn't really thought about it. For so long, my focus had been on healing, on moving forward without looking back. But now, with Lucas sitting in front of me, something stirred inside. Maybe moving forward didn't mean doing it alone. I met his gaze, a small smile playing on my lips. I guess I'm still figuring it out. He chuckled.
Good.
Then, let's figure it out together. His confidence was both frustrating and endearing. Lucas had always been that way, sure of himself, sure of me, even when I wasn't. I shook my head. And what makes you think I want you in my future? He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a low, teasing murmur. Because you haven't walked away yet.
Damn.
He had a point. And for the first time in months, I didn't want to run. A new beginning. One date turned into two. Two turned into late-night calls, playful teasing, and moments that made me forget I had ever been broken. Lucas wasn't the kind of guy who filled empty spaces. He was the kind who made me want more. One night, as we walked along the quiet streets, he stopped abruptly. I turned to him, confused. What? Before I could finish, he reached for my hand, his thumb brushing against my skin. I need to know, he said softly, his voice lacking its usual cocky edge. Are you still looking back? I blinked, my heart pounding. Lucas? He shook his head. No games, no half-truths. Just tell me, do I have a chance, or am I wasting my time? I stared at him, at the man who had always been patient, always been there, even when I didn't see him. And, in that moment I knew, I wasn't looking back anymore. I squeezed his hand and smiled. You were never a waste of time. His lips curved into a slow, breathtaking smile. Then let's do this right. And when he leaned in, closing the space between us, I didn't hesitate. I let him kiss me. Falling for Lucas wasn't like a wildfire. It wasn't reckless or all-consuming. It was slow, like the tide coming in, inch by inch, until I was standing knee-deep in something I couldn't ignore. And he never rushed me. After that night, after that kiss, he didn't push for more. Instead, he let things breathe, let me set the pace, let me feel safe. And somehow, that made it even harder to resist him. A week later, I found myself curled up on my couch, phone in hand. Lucas, you awake? I smiled. Me, obviously. Who even sleeps before midnight? Lucas, good. Walk to your window. I frowned but got up, padding barefoot to the window of my apartment. Pushing the curtain aside, my breath caught. There he was, standing on the sidewalk, hands in his pockets, looking up at me like something out of a movie. I laughed, shaking my head as I opened the window. "Lucas, it's late." He grinned. And I rolled my eyes. And normal people don't show up at someone's apartment at. I glanced at my phone. 11:47 p.m. He smirked. "Lucky for you, I've never been normal." I sighed, trying to suppress my smile. "Why are you here?"
His voice softened.
"Because I wanted to see you." Something in my chest clenched. I could have told him to go home, could have ignored the way my heart skipped a beat. But instead, I grabbed a hoodie, slipped on my sneakers, and took the stairs down. When I stepped outside, he was leaning against his car, hands still in his pockets. He looked up, his smirk shifting into something warmer. "Took you long enough." I shoved my hands into my hoodie. "You're impossible." He tilted his head. "Yeah? And yet, here you are." I sighed. "Here I am." And just like that, we started walking. No destination. No rush. Just us. The almost moments. Lucas had a way of making me forget. Forget the betrayal. Forget the heartbreak. But most of all, forget that I was supposed to be guarded. One night, we were sitting on my couch, a movie playing in the background. I had barely been paying attention to the screen, too aware of the way his arm rested along the back of the couch, not touching me, but close. Too close. At one point, I reached for my drink at the same time he did. Our fingers brushed. I froze.
So, did he?
The moment stretched, the air between us suddenly heavy. Slowly, he turned his head, eyes locked onto mine. His hand didn't move. Neither did mine. "You okay?" he asked, voice quiet. I swallowed. My heartbeat too loud. Too fast.
Yeah.
But I wasn't. Because part of me wanted to close the space between us. And part of me was still scared. Maybe he saw it, because he didn't push. Instead, he gave me a small nod, pulled his hand back, and turned back to the movie like nothing happened. Like he was telling me, "Take your time. I'll wait." And somehow, that made me fall for him even more. Just when I thought I was ready to move forward, the past came knocking. Literally. One evening, after a long day at work, I got home, kicked off my shoes, and went to grab a drink. Then a knock at my door. I frowned, setting my glass down before walking over. The moment I pulled the door open, my stomach dropped. Maya. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her face pale. I crossed my arms. "What do you want?" She swallowed hard. "We need to talk." My pulse pounded in my ears. I should have slammed the door. Should have told her I didn't owe her anything. But instead, I stood there, staring at the woman who had betrayed me, feeling something I never expected. Not anger, not pain, just emptiness. I exhaled slowly. "You have 2 minutes." Maya bit her lip, hesitated, then whispered something that made my world shift again. "I think I made a mistake." Thanks for watching. For more stories, please subscribe Eververse Novel.